Commander stood before the Galactic Council with his silver mane bristling. His clawed hands gripped the speaker's podium hard enough to leave marks in the metal. Around him sat representatives from 40 different species, all watching him with varying degrees of interest and concern. The great council chamber stretched high above, its dome showing the stars beyond. He was, and his people were warriors. They stood 7 feet tall with leonine features and natural armor plating that covered their shoulders and backs. For 3 generations, his family had led the defense fleets that protected the outer colonies from raiders and pirates. His word carried weight in matters of security, and today he intended to use every bit of that influence. "You are making a mistake," said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The humans cannot be trusted. They come from a death world where everything evolved to kill. Their own planet tried to destroy them at every turn, and they survived by becoming the apex predator of their world." Council member, a tall being covered in blue scales, shifted in her seat. "Commander, we have reviewed the human application thoroughly. They have passed all our standard evaluations." His eyes flashed with anger. "Your evaluations mean nothing. I have studied their history. They wage war on themselves constantly. For thousands of years, they have fought and killed their own kind over territory, resources, and ideas. They are persistent hunters who never stop, never surrender. Once they mark something as prey, they will chase it until it falls from exhaustion." He pulled up holographic images that floated above the council floor. Battle scenes from human history appeared, one after another. Ancient warriors with swords, soldiers with primitive guns, fighter aircraft streaking across skis, massive warships exchanging fire across oceans. "Look at this," growled. "This is what they do to each other. Imagine what they will do to us once they learn our weaknesses. They study war like we study medicine. They write books about how to defeat enemies. They teach their children strategy and tactics. Every human is a potential soldier." Council member, whose species resembled large insects, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "But Commander, many species have violent histories. They themselves were once divided into warring clans." "And we learned from that," snapped. "We unified and moved beyond internal conflict. But humans, they still fight each other even as they reach for the stars. Their own planet is divided into hundreds of separate territories, each with its own military. They call it diversity, but I call it preparation for conquest." The chamber fell silent, took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. He had to make them understand. He had to make them see the danger. "3 years ago," he said quietly, "you dismissed my warnings about the raiders. You said I was being paranoid, seeing threats where none existed. You said they were too small and disorganized to pose a real danger." His voice hardened. "And then they attacked Colony 7. 15,000 civilians died in that raid. My mate was among them. She was there on a relief mission, helping to build schools for the colony children." The council members shifted uncomfortably. They remembered. The attack had been a wake-up call for the entire galaxy. "I will not let you make the same mistake twice," continued. "I have 3 cubs who lost their mother because this council failed to act on a clear threat. I raised them alone, teaching them the warrior traditions of our people. I taught them to recognize danger before it strikes. And every instinct I have, every bit of training and experience, tells me that humanity is the greatest threat we have ever faced." He gestured to the images still floating above the chamber. "They come here wearing smiles and offering friendship. They speak of peace and cooperation. But I have seen what they are capable of. They have weapons that can crack planets. They have diseases they engineered that could wipe out entire species. They have artificial intelligence that rivals organic minds. And they bring all of this to our doorstep, asking us to trust them." Council member stood. "Commander, we appreciate your concerns. Your service to the galactic community is valued, and your loss is one we all share. But we cannot reject an entire species based on fear alone. The humans have shown no hostile intent. They seek membership so they can learn from us and contribute to galactic peace. That is what they want you to think, said. But I know predators when I see them, and humans are the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The vote was called, watched as the council members cast their decisions. One by one, the votes appeared on the display. Green for approval, red for rejection. The green lights far outnumbered the red. Only the delegation and 2 other species had voted against human membership. The motion passes, council member announced. Humanity is granted probationary membership in the Galactic Council. A human diplomatic vessel will dock at Station 7 in 2 weeks for integration talks. Felt his heart sink. He had failed. He had laid out all the evidence, shared his concerns, warned them of the danger, and they had ignored him, just like they ignored him about the... He turned and walked from the chamber without another word. His aide, a younger warrior named As, fell into step beside him. "Commander, what will we do now?" As asked. "We stay alert," said grimly. "We watch the humans carefully, and when they show their true nature, we will be ready." The journey back to his family quarters on Station 7 took 3 hours by shuttle. The station was a massive structure that served as neutral ground for the galactic community. Thousands of beings from dozens of species lived and worked there. It was supposed to be a symbol of unity and cooperation. Now it would house humans. His quarters were modest but comfortable. He had moved there after his death, unable to stay in the larger family home they had shared. The door opened to reveal his 3 cubs waiting for him. His eldest son stood at attention. At 16 years old, he was already showing the build of a warrior. He was training for his trials, the tests that would mark his passage into adulthood. And Myra, his twin daughters, were younger at 12 years old. They looked so much like their mother that it sometimes hurt to look at them. But they had his warrior spirit, already excelling in their combat training despite their age. Father said, "We heard about the vote, the humans are coming." Nodded slowly. He moved to the viewing window and looked out at the stars. "Yes, in 2 weeks a human ship will dock here. Their diplomat is a Captain Lisa Monroe, a military officer turned representative." A soldier noted. "Exactly. They send a warrior wearing a diplomat's mask," turned to face his cubs. "I want you all to stay away from the human sections of the station. Do not interact with them. Do not speak to them. They are dangerous." Tilted her head, her golden eyes curious. "Are they really as scary as the stories say?" Looked at his daughter, thinking of all the images he had shown the council. The wars, the weapons, the relentless human drive to survive and dominate. "They are worse than any story could capture," he said quietly. "They are apex predators who learn to smile, and they are coming here to our home, wearing the disguise of friendship." Myra moved closer to her sister, but the council approved them. "The council made a mistake," said. "They did not listen to my warnings, just as they did not listen when I warned them about the... Your mother died because of their ignorance. I will not let the same thing happen to you." He knelt down so he was eye level with the twins. "Promise me you will stay away from the humans. Promise me you will be careful." Both cubs nodded solemnly. "We promise, Father." Pulled them into an embrace, then included as well. His family was all he had left. He would protect them from any threat, even if that threat came wearing a smile and offering an outstretched hand. Outside the window, a transport ship passed by, carrying supplies and passengers to various parts of the station. In 2 weeks, one of those ships would carry humans to Station 7. Would be watching. 2 weeks passed like a slow countdown. Watch from a distance as the human diplomatic vessel approached Station 7. The ship was smaller than he expected, sleek and functional rather than imposing. It bore the markings of Earth's unified space program, a blue and green planet symbol on white background. The arrival ceremony was held in the main docking bay. did not attend, but he watched the footage on his personal display. Captain Lisa Monroe emerged from the ship with a small delegation. She was tall for a human, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style. She wore a diplomatic uniform, but noted the way she moved. Military training was evident in every step. Station 7 adjusted to its new residents. Most species were curious about the humans. They visited the human quarters, attended cultural exchange sessions, and asked endless questions. The humans seemed friendly and open, always willing to talk about Earth and human customs. The community kept its distance, had made his position clear, and most of his people respected his judgment. They remembered that he had been right about the when others doubted him. But cubs were naturally curious, and keeping them away from anything required constant supervision. It was a standard work cycle. The station's artificial day in full swing had been called to an emergency security meeting. A scout ship had been detected near the border territories. The council wanted to review defense protocols and discuss possible responses. Before leaving for the meeting, brought his cubs to his sister's stall in the commercial district. Ra ran a successful spice merchant business, importing rare flavors from a dozen different worlds. She was patient and responsible, and the cubs enjoyed visiting her. "I will return in 3 hours," told Ra. "Keep them close." "Of course," his sister replied, "we will be fine." Had training exercises that afternoon, so only the twins accompanied. And Myra settled near their aunt's stall, supposedly helping to arrange containers of colorful spices. But the commercial district was always busy, full of interesting sights and sounds. Ra was negotiating with a supplier when the twins grew restless. They had been good for over an hour, but 12-year-old cubs could only sit still for so long. Through the crowd, they heard something unusual. Music, but not like any they had heard before. "Stay here," whispered to Myra. "You stay here," Myra whispered back. They looked at each other, then at their aunt who was deeply involved in her negotiation. The music called to them. Just a quick look, they told themselves, just to see what made such interesting sounds. The twins slipped into the crowd. The music led them to the entertainment district, an area technically off-limits to young cubs without adult supervision. The entertainment district was where station residents went to relax, with restaurants, game centers, and performance spaces. The twins had never been there alone. They found the source of the music near a public plaza. A musician was performing with crystalline instruments that changed color as they produced different notes. A small crowd had gathered to watch. The twins moved closer, fascinated by the display. Neither of them noticed the merchant hurrying through the plaza behind them. They were a trading species, short and stocky with 4 arms. This particular merchant was carrying a container of power cells, the kind used for emergency generators. He was late for a delivery and moving too fast through the crowded space. Someone bumped into him. The container slipped from his upper arms. He grabbed for it with his lower arms but missed. The container hit the ground hard and broke open. 12 power cells scattered across the plaza floor. Several rolled near where the twins stood watching the musician. The merchant stared in horror. Power cells were stable when properly contained, but damaged cells could overload if their casings cracked, and several of the cells now showed visible cracks. "Everyone move," the merchant shouted. "Get back, they are going to blow." The crowd reacted instantly. Beings of a dozen species ran in all directions, desperate to get clear. The musician grabbed his instruments and fled. Shop owners started closing their security doors. And Myra stood frozen in the center of the plaza. The music had stopped. The crowd was running. They did not understand what was happening. They saw the glowing power cells scattered around their feet and knew something was wrong, but fear locked their muscles. One of the cells began to spark, then another. The overload sequence had started. Somewhere in the panicking crowd, someone triggered the emergency alert. Sirens began to wail throughout the district. Station security would respond, but their closest team was 3 levels away. They would never arrive in time. Lisa Monroe had been off duty, exploring the station in civilian clothes. She wanted to understand 7 better, to learn its layout and meet its residents outside of formal diplomatic settings. She had been browsing a shop 2 levels above the plaza when the alarm sounded. Her military instincts kicked in immediately. She ran toward the sound of panic, fighting against the flow of fleeing civilians. She reached a railing overlooking the plaza and assessed the situation in seconds. Power cells, multiple units already sparking, 2 cubs frozen in the blast zone. Lisa vaulted over the railing and dropped to the plaza floor below, landing hard but rolling to absorb the impact. She was already running before she fully straightened up. The cubs were 20 meters away. The cells would explode in seconds. There was no time to think, no time to calculate odds or consider alternatives. There was only action. She sprinted across the plaza. Her boots pounded on the deck plating. The cubs saw her coming, this tall human running toward them while everyone else ran away. Their eyes went wide with confusion and fear. Lisa reached them and scooped both cubs up in her arms. They were heavy, much heavier than human children their size would be. Their armor plating added significant weight, but adrenaline and determination made her strong. She spotted a reinforced cargo container 10 meters away, used for storing sensitive equipment. It would not provide perfect protection, but it was better than nothing. She ran for it, holding the cubs tight against her chest. The first power cell exploded behind her, then the second, then all the rest went up in a chain reaction. The blast wave hit Lisa's back like a wall of force. She dove behind the cargo container and twisted in midair, putting her body between the cubs and the explosion. They hit the ground hard. Lisa felt impacts against her back and shoulders as debris from the blast rained down on them. The cargo container absorbed most of the explosion's energy, but pieces of metal and composite material flew over it and around it. Something sharp sliced across Lisa's left arm. Something else struck her back hard enough to knock the breath from her lungs. The explosion echoed through the plaza. Then there was silence except for the continued wailing of sirens and the crackle of small fires. Lisa lay on top of the cubs, her body still shielding them. Everything hurt. She could feel warmth spreading down her arm where something had cut deep. Her back screamed with pain, but she forced herself to move to check on the cubs. "Are you okay?" she managed to ask. And Myra stared up at her with huge golden eyes. They were trembling but unmarked, not a scratch on them. Lisa had taken all the impacts. "We are fine," whispered. Station security arrived moments later, along with medical teams. They found Lisa bleeding but conscious, still positioned protectively over the cubs. The scene was clear. The security footage was already being reviewed. A human had run toward danger while everyone else fled. A human had saved the commander's daughters at the cost of her own blood. Ra arrived in a panic, pushing through the security cordon. She saw her nieces covered in dust but alive. She saw the human being treated for cuts and burns. She understood immediately what had happened. "Thank you," Ra said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for saving them." Lisa nodded, wincing as a medic cleaned the cut on her arm. Any decent person would have done the same. But they had been on the station long enough to know better. In those critical seconds, only one being had run toward the explosion. Only one being had put 2 alien cubs above her own safety. A medical team member carefully lifted the twins, checking them over. Another team focused on Lisa, applying burn treatments and bandaging cuts. The human had taken at least 8 impacts from flying debris, 2 burns from plasma discharge, multiple lacerations. She would need several days of treatment. Security chief reviewed the footage 3 times. Then he sent a priority message to commander. The message was simple. There has been an incident involving your cubs. They are safe. You need to come to medical immediately." Within the station's community, word spread faster than any official communication could travel. The Alpha's cubs had been in an explosion. A human had saved them. A human had bled for them. By the time received the message and raced toward the medical center, hundreds of station residents already knew what happened. They were talking about it in shops and corridors, trying to reconcile what they knew about the fearsome human warriors with what this human had actually done. His world had changed in the seconds it took for power cells to explode. He just did not know it yet. The message reached in the middle of the security briefing. His communicator flashed red, indicating an emergency priority. When he saw the words about his cubs and the medical center, everything else ceased to matter. He left the briefing without explanation, running through the corridors of Station 7 faster than he had moved in years. His heart pounded with fear and rage. His cubs. Something had happened to his cubs. They were supposed to be safe with Ra in the commercial district. The medical center was 3 sections away, covered the distance in minutes, pushing past other beings in the corridors. By the time he burst through the medical center doors, his silver mane was wild and his breathing harsh. "My cubs," he demanded of the first medical staff he saw. "Where are they?" A nurse gestured to a private room. "They are unharmed, Commander. Room 7. Did not wait for more explanation. He rushed to room 7 and found Myra sitting on an examination table. Ra stood beside them, her hand on shoulder. The twins were covered in dust and looked shaken, but he could see no injuries. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled them both into his arms, checking them over with his hands even as he held them close. No cuts, no burns, no broken bones. They were trembling but whole. "What happened?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Ra explained haltingly, her words tumbling over each other. The twins had wandered off. There was an accident with power cells, an explosion in the entertainment plaza. The cubs had been in the center of the blast zone. "How are they not hurt?" demanded. "You said there was an explosion." "A human saved them," Ra said quietly. "Captain Lisa Monroe. She ran into the blast zone and shielded them with her own body. She took all the impacts. Your cubs do not have a single scratch because the human would not let anything touch them." Felt his world tilt. A human. One of the dangerous predators he had warned everyone about. She had saved his cubs. "I need to see the footage," he said. Security chief was waiting outside the room with a portable display. He showed the security recording without comment. The footage was clear and undeniable. Watched as the power cells scattered. He watched the crowd flee. He watched his daughters stand frozen in the center of the plaza. Then he watched as a human vaulted over a railing and ran toward the danger while everyone else ran away. The footage showed Lisa's sprint across the plaza, showed her scoop up both cubs despite their weight, showed her dive behind the cargo container and twist to shield them with her body. The explosion followed, and through the smoke and debris, could see the impacts striking the human's back and arms. When the smoke cleared, Lisa was on top of his cubs, still protecting them even after the danger had passed. Watched the footage 3 times. His mind refused to accept what his eyes showed him. This was not how predators behaved. This was not the action of a species that could not be trusted. This was something else entirely. "Where is she now?" he asked. "Room 12, replied. "She has 2nd-degree burns and multiple lacerations. The medical team expects full recovery, but she will need several days of treatment." Stood still for a long moment. Every instinct he had cultivated over years told him to stay away from the human, to keep his distance from anything related to that dangerous species. But his cubs were alive because of her. That was a debt that demanded acknowledgement. "I need to see her," he said. Ron nodded approval. "That would be appropriate." Walked to room 12 with heavy steps. Outside the door stood a human male wearing a military uniform. Lieutenant Chris Palmer, according to his name badge. The young man straightened when he saw approaching. "I need to speak with Captain Monroe," said. Chris studied him for a moment. "She is resting. The treatment was painful." "I am Commander. She saved my cubs." Recognition flashed across the human's face. He nodded slowly and stepped aside. "She told me you would come. Go ahead." The room was dimly lit. Lisa lay on a medical bed with her back propped up at an angle. Bandages covered both arms and wrapped around her shoulders. Burn treatment patches glowed faintly on her skin. She looked up as entered, and her expression was calm despite what must have been considerable pain. "Commander," she said, "your daughters are well." Moved closer to the bed but maintained his distance. "They are unharmed because of you." Lisa nodded. "I am glad." Silence fell between them. Struggled with words, with concepts his mind had not prepared for. Finally, he asked the question that burned in his thoughts. "What do you want in return?" Lisa's expression shifted to confusion. "In return for what?" "For saving my cubs," said, his voice harder than he intended. "You put yourself in danger for them. You took injuries that should have been theirs. What is your price?" The confusion on Lisa's face deepened, then transformed into something that might have been disappointment. "There is no price. I saw children in danger and acted. Any decent person would have done the same." "Any decent person," repeated. "But humans are not decent. You are killers, conquerors, apex predators wearing diplomatic masks. I told the council this. I warned them what your species is capable of." Lisa's expression hardened now, the pain momentarily forgotten. "You are right about what we are capable of. Humanity has done terrible things. We have waged wars that killed millions. We have created weapons that could sterilize planets. We have treated each other with cruelty that would make most species in this galaxy weep." She shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. "But that is exactly why I saved your daughters. Because we know what violence costs. Because we have seen what happens when strength is used without compassion. Because we learned, through centuries of blood and horror, that power without mercy leads only to destruction." Felt his anger rising, the emotion easier than the confusion. "Do not lecture me about violence. My mate died because raiders attacked a colony. I raised 3 cubs alone because of violence. Do not tell me about the cost of war." "Then you understand," Lisa said, her voice firm but not unkind. "You understand why someone who knows that cost would choose to protect children rather than let them die. Your mate's death taught you the price of violence. Humanity's entire history taught us the same lesson." She met his eyes directly. "I did not save Myra to gain favor with you or the council. I saved them because failing to act would have been a betrayal of everything humanity learned through our darkest centuries. Every war we fought, every mistake we made, every time we chose violence over mercy and paid the price for it. All of that taught us one thing. Those who truly understand violence understand its cost, and those who understand the cost choose mercy when they can." Wanted to argue, to reject her words, to maintain the certainty he had carried for so long. But his cubs were alive. They were alive because this human chose to sacrifice her own safety for them. "You have a military background," he said, grasping for something to support his worldview. "You are a warrior. Warriors understand tactics. Perhaps this is all tactics to you." Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Do you want to know why I left active military service to become a diplomat? I have a daughter back on Earth. She is about the same age as your twins. Every time I deployed, every time I went into combat, I saw her face. I thought about what kind of galaxy I wanted her to grow up in." She gestured to her bandaged arms. "I took these injuries because when I saw Myra standing in that blast zone, I saw my daughter. Instinct took over. Any parent would understand that. The species does not matter. The politics do not matter. Children in danger need protection. That is all there is to it." Something inside shifted at those words. She had a cub of her own, and still she risked her life for his daughters. This was not political calculation. This was not species loyalty. This was something deeper. "You serve light years away from your own child," he said slowly. "How can you bear it?" Lisa's smile was sad. "I serve so that she can grow up in a galaxy where species help each other instead of fearing each other. I serve so that maybe, when she is grown, beings like you and I will not need to have this conversation. We will simply act to protect all cubs, regardless of which world they come from." Stood silent, his mind working through everything he had seen and heard. Before he could respond, an alarm blared through the medical center, then throughout the entire station. The sound was one he knew well: attack warning. Chris Palmer burst into the room. "Captain, we have incoming. Multiple vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. The station is under attack." Lisa tried to stand, grimacing at the pain. "How many ships?" "Initial count shows 12 raiders, 1 capital ship. They are demanding surrender." Warrior instinct snapped into focus. His personal confusion could wait. His cubs were on this station, along with thousands of other civilians. "I need to get to the command center." He turned back to Lisa. "You should rest, you are injured." "My crew needs me," Lisa said, already moving toward the door despite Chris trying to stop her. "And your station needs every trained officer it can get." They moved together through the corridors, an unlikely pair racing toward the command center. Beings rushed past them in organized chaos, heading for emergency shelters or battle stations. The station had defense protocols, but everyone knew there were brutal raiders who showed no mercy to civilians. The command center was already full when they arrived. Station commander, with 4 arms and a tactical genius reputation, stood over the holographic display showing the approaching enemy fleet. "Fighters are launching," said Spotting. "Commander, I need you to coordinate your people." Move to the tactical station. Lisa followed, studying the enemy formation on the display. Her eyes tracked the movements, and something in her expression sharpened. "There," she said, pointing to a gap in the raider formation. "They are overextending their left flank to appear more threatening. If we hit them there with a coordinated strike, we can break their formation." Looked at the display. She was right, he could see it now. The weakness was small but significant. "That requires perfect coordination," he said, "between fighters and any capital ships we have available." Lisa met his eyes. "My ship has the firepower. If your fighters can draw their attention, we can exploit that weakness." "It would require trust. Trust between and human forces. Trust in this warrior diplomat who had already proven she would bleed for his cubs." Looked at the display, then at Lisa, then back at the approaching fleet. His cubs were in the civilian shelters. So were thousands of other families. The choice was simple. "Do it," he said. The command center erupted into organized chaos. Moved to the coordination station while Lisa hobbled to the human communications array, still favoring her injured side. Station commander coordinated between all forces, his 4 arms working multiple controls simultaneously. "Fighters, this is Alpha Leader," spoke into his communicator. "Execute formation Delta 7. Draw their fire toward the outer perimeter." On the holographic display, 20 fighters broke from their defensive positions. The small, maneuverable craft raced toward the fleet, weapons blazing. The raiders responded exactly as predicted, shifting their formation to engage the fighters. Lisa was speaking rapidly to her ship. "Captain, I need full power to forward shields. Target their capital ship's left flank when the opening appears. Yes, I understand the risk. Do it anyway." The human diplomatic vessel was not designed for heavy combat, but it carried defensive weapons and robust shielding. On the display, the ship moved into position, using the station itself as cover. The capital ship was 3 times the size of any other vessel in the fight. It bristled with weapons and carried enough firepower to crack the station's shields with sustained bombardment. The smaller raider ships spread out, some harassing the fighters while others moved to surround the station. "They are going to try to cut off our escape routes," noted. "Standard siege tactics. They will demand surrender once they have us surrounded." Watch the display intently. How long until they are in position? 3 minutes. Lisa finished coordinating with her ship and moved to stand beside. She studied the enemy movements, her tactical mind clearly working through scenarios. If we are going to hit them, it has to be now. Once they complete their formation, that weakness will close. Agreed. Open the channel to all fighters. All units, execute maneuver Theta on my mark. Target the coordinates Lieutenant Palmer is uploading now. Chris Palmer, who had followed Lisa to the command center, worked the human tactical computer. Targeting data flowed to the fighters and to the human ship. The display showed attack vectors converging on the left flank. "Human vessel determination ready to fire on your command," Lisa said. Watch the countdown. The fighters were in position. The human ship had charged its weapons. The fleet continued its spread, unaware of the coordinated strike about to hit them. "Mark," commanded. 20 fighters changed direction simultaneously, converging on the weak point in the formation. Their weapons' fire lit up the darkness of space. Half a second later, the human ship emerged from behind the station and fired its main cannons. The concentrated firepower struck the left flank like a hammer. Shields on 3 raider ships collapsed under the assault. One ship took critical damage and began venting atmosphere. The others scattered, their formation broken. "Direct hit," Chris reported. "Enemy formation disrupted." But the victory was momentary. The capital ship rotated to bring its heavy weapons to bear. Warning lights flashed on the command center displays. "They are targeting the civilian sector," said, his voice tight with concern. "If that beam connects, it will penetrate the emergency shelters." Felt ice form in his chest. The civilian sector, where his cubs were hiding with thousands of other families, where younglings of a dozen species huddled in reinforced rooms, trusting the adults to keep them safe. "Can we intercept?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Not in time," said. "The fighters are out of position. Our defense batteries cannot generate enough power to stop a capital ship weapon." Lisa was staring at the display, her face pale. Saw her lips move silently, and he knew she was thinking of her own daughter back on Earth. Thinking of and Myra in the shelters. Thinking of all the children who would die if that beam fired. "Captain," Lisa said into her communicator, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Bring determination about. Position between the capital ship and the civilian sector." Chris spun to face her. "Captain, that is a suicide position. Our shields cannot withstand a direct hit from their main weapon." "I know what our shields can and cannot handle, Lieutenant." Lisa's voice was calm, almost gentle. "But we can buy time. Enough time for the civilians to evacuate to deeper shelters. Enough time for the defense batteries to recharge." Understood immediately what she was proposing. The human ship would serve as a shield, absorbing the weapon's fire to protect the station. The ship would be destroyed. Her crew would likely die, but the civilians would have a chance. "No," said, "there has to be another way." Lisa turned to him. Her bandaged arms hung at her sides. Her face still showed the burns from saving his cubs just hours earlier. "There is no other way. You know there is not." On the display, the human ship was already moving into position. The capital ship's main weapon showed power readings climbing toward full charge. 30 seconds until it fired. Maybe 40. Lisa said, using her name for the first time, "You have a daughter." "Yes," Lisa said simply. "And in Myra are someone's daughters. So are all the other cubs in those shelters. Someone's cubs, someone's children. If I do nothing, they die. My daughter will grow up wondering why her mother stood by and let children die when she could have done something." She smiled, and there was peace in that smile despite the tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I told you earlier that I serve so my daughter can grow up in a galaxy where species help each other. Let me prove it. Let me show that humanity meant what we said about wanting peace." Chris was arguing with the human crew over the communicator, but Captain on the Determination had apparently made his decision. The ship positioned itself directly between the weapon and the civilian sector of the station. Its shields were at maximum, but everyone in the command center knew it would not be enough. 20 seconds to weapon discharge, reported quietly. Lisa moved to the window overlooking the docking bay. She could not see the Determination from this angle, but she stared out at the stars as though she could. Moved to stand beside her. "Why?" he asked. "Why sacrifice everything for beings you barely know, for cubs that are not your own?" Lisa kept her eyes on the stars. "Because it is the right thing to do. Because someone has to draw the line and say no child dies today, not if I can stop it. Because humanity spent 10,000 years learning this lesson, and if we have learned anything from all that blood and suffering, it should be this. We protect the innocent, regardless of cost." 10 seconds said. The capital ship's weapon reached full charge. Energy crackled along its length, bright enough to see even through the command center windows. 5 seconds. Watched the display, feeling helpless. His warriors were too far away. His weapons were too weak. All he could do was watch as a human crew prepared to die to save his people. Firing. The main weapon discharged. A beam of concentrated energy lanced across the space between the capital ship and the station. It struck the human ship Determination broadside. The human shields flared brilliant white, holding for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4. The entire ship shuddered under the impact. Then the shields collapsed and the beam began burning through the hull. "They are venting atmosphere," Chris said, his voice breaking. "Hull breach on multiple decks. Emergency power failing." But the beam had been stopped. The civilian sector remained untouched. In those critical seconds while the Determination absorbed the weapon's fire, the station's defense batteries finished recharging. "Defense batteries ready," announced, targeting capital ship. "Fire everything," ordered. The station's main weapons fired in unison. Multiple beams struck the capital ship, which had left itself vulnerable while discharging its own weapon. The raider shields buckled under the assault. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull. The fighters, having repositioned, added their firepower. The remaining raider ships, seeing their capital ship damaged and their formation broken, began to retreat. Within minutes, the enemy fleet was fleeing back toward hyperspace. But barely noticed the victory. He was watching the human ship, which was drifting now, its engines dark and hull breached in multiple places. "Determination, report status," Lisa said into her communicator. Static filled the line for long seconds, then a weak voice responded. "Here, we took critical damage, engineering is gone, life support is failing, we are abandoning ship." "How many pods?" Lisa asked. "Launching now, 23 pods, the rest of the crew, they did not make it." 23 escape pods launched from the dying ship. That meant at least 30 crew members had died in the initial strike. Had died because their captain chose to position them between the weapon and the civilians. "Recovering all pods now," said. "Fighters are providing escort." Lisa sagged against the window, the adrenaline fatting and the pain from her injuries returning. Chris moved to support her, but she waved him off. She needed to see this through, needed to know her crew was safe. Stood beside her, watching the escape pods being recovered. His people were safe. His cubs were safe. Thousands of families were safe because this human crew had chosen to sacrifice themselves. "I was wrong," he said quietly. Lisa turned to look at him. "I told the council you were dangerous," continued. that humans could not be trusted, that you were predators wearing diplomatic masks. He gestured to the drifting determination. I was wrong. You are dangerous, but not in the way I thought. How do you mean? Met her eyes. You are dangerous because you make us question everything we believe. You make us see that strength and mercy are not opposites. You make us realize that the fiercest warriors can also be the gentlest protectors. He looked back at the damaged ship. You are dangerous because you force us to be better than we are. The last of the escape pods docked safely. Captain and his surviving crew were brought to the medical center for treatment. The fleet had fled beyond scanner range. The station began damage assessment and repair operations. Lisa finally allowed herself to be led back to medical for continued treatment. But before she left the command center, she turned to one more time. Your cubs are safe, she said. That is all that matters. Watched her leave, supported by Chris and medical staff. His mind was reeling with everything he had witnessed. A human had saved his cubs. A human crew had sacrificed their ship for his people. Everything he believed about humanity was being challenged by their actions. His communicator chimed. Ra's voice came through. Brother, the all-clear has been given. The cubs are coming out of the shelters. They are asking for you. I am coming, replied. He needed to see his daughters. He needed to hold them and confirm they were truly safe. And he needed to think about what he would tell them when they asked about the battle, about the humans, about everything he had taught them to fear. Because his cubs had learned something today that he was only beginning to understand. Sometimes the most dangerous beings in the galaxy are the ones who choose mercy when they could choose violence. And that kind of danger was something worth learning from. 3 days after the battle, Station 7 continued its repairs. Work crews patched hull breaches and replaced damaged systems. The civilian sectors had been restored to full function. The docking bays were busy, with supply ships bringing materials and reinforcements. The wreckage of the human ship Determination had been recovered and brought into a secure bay. Engineers were already analyzing it, though everyone knew the vessel was beyond repair. It would serve as a memorial now, a reminder of what had been sacrificed. Stood in the observation deck overlooking that bay, watching crews carefully document every piece of the destroyed ship. 32 humans had died when the weapon struck. 32 beings who chose to stand between danger and innocence, who chose to protect cubs that were not their own. Father, he turned to find and Myra approaching, with standing protectively behind them. His cubs had been quiet since the attack. They understood how close they had come to death twice in 3 days. First the explosion, then the battle. Are you well? Asked, kneeling to their level. We want to see Captain Monroe, Myra said. Is she still in medical? Had visited Lisa once since the battle, bringing formal thanks from the Warrior Council. She was healing, but would carry scars from the explosion injuries. The emotional toll of losing 32 crew members was harder to measure. She is recovering, said. Why do you wish to see her? Held up something woven from colored cords. We made her an honor cord. Aunt Ra helped us with the patterns. We want to give it to her. Examine the cord. It was traditionally given by cubs to warriors who protected them. The patterns told a story: danger, protection, sacrifice, gratitude. His daughters had spent days weaving this, putting their gratitude into every knot. That is appropriate, he said quietly. She saved your lives. She saved everyone, added. His eldest son had been in training when the attack happened, helping to coordinate younger cubs into the shelters. He had seen the panic, the fear, the moment when everyone thought the civilian sector would be destroyed. Her crew died for us. Stood, come then, we will visit her together. The medical center was less crowded now. Most of the injured from the battle had been treated and released. Lisa had a private room, a courtesy extended by station commander in recognition of her service. Approached the door and knocked softly. Come in, Lisa's voice called. She was sitting up in bed, reviewing reports on a data tablet. The bandages on her arms had been reduced, showing pink new skin underneath. The burn patches were gone. She looked tired but alert. "Commander," she said, setting the tablet aside. Then she saw the cubs and smiled, and guests. "Hello, Myra." The twins moved forward, suddenly shy. Myra held out the honor cord with both hands. "We made this for you. It is a warrior's honor cord. Cubs give them to adults who protect them." Lisa took the cord carefully, studying the intricate patterns. Her eyes grew bright with moisture. "This is beautiful, thank you." "The pattern tells the story," explained. "How you ran into the explosion, how you shielded us, how your ship protected the station." "We are alive because of you," Myra added simply. Lisa held the cord to her chest. "I am honored, truly honored. May I wear it?" The twins nodded eagerly. Lisa wrapped the cord around her wrist, securing it with the traditional knot. The colors stood out against her skin, visible proof of the bond between warrior and protected. Watched this exchange with complex emotions churning inside him. For weeks, he had warned his cubs about humans, had taught them to see danger, to recognize threats. Now his daughters were giving a human their highest expression of gratitude and trust. "Captain Monroe," he said formally, "I have come to deliver a message from the Galactic Council. They request your presence at an emergency session in 2 days." Lisa nodded. "I expected as much. We destroyed a diplomatic vessel. There will be questions." "The vessel was destroyed because you used it to save thousands of lives," corrected. "The Council understands this." Stepped forward. "Will you tell them what happened? Will you tell them how humans fight?" Lisa considered the question carefully. "I will tell them the truth, that humanity learned through painful experience that violence always has a cost, that the strongest warriors are not those who seek battle but those who prevent it, that protecting the innocent is the highest purpose of any being capable of violence." "That is not what my father told the council before," said, then clapped her hand over her mouth, realizing she might have said something wrong. But Lisa smiled gently. "Your father was not wrong to be cautious. Humans are dangerous. We come from a harsh world and we learn to survive through violence. But we also learned that survival is not the same as living, that winning every battle means nothing if you lose who you are in the process." She looked at, "Your father loves you very much. He was trying to protect you and all his people by warning them about potential threats. That is what good leaders do. But sometimes protection means building bridges instead of walls." The cubs absorbed this wisdom, their young minds working through complex ideas. Felt a surge of gratitude toward Lisa for handling his daughter's comment with such grace. "We should let Captain Monroe rest," he said. "She needs to recover." The cubs said their goodbyes, the twins hugging Lisa carefully to avoid her healing injuries. Gave her a warrior's salute, which she returned with equal formality. As they left, lingered at the door. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for my cubs, for my people." "Thank you for giving humanity a chance," Lisa replied. "Even after everything you said to the council, you trusted us in battle. You coordinated with my ship. That took courage." "It took desperation," admitted. "But you were right, and I was wrong. I judged your entire species based on fear rather than evidence." 2 days later, the Galactic Council convened in emergency session. The chamber was packed with representatives from every member species and dozens of observers. The attack on Station 7 had shocked the entire galactic community. The had grown bolder than anyone realized. But the main topic of discussion was humanity's actions during the battle. Stood at the speaker's podium, the same place where he had warned against human membership weeks earlier. The irony was not lost on him. "Members of the council," he began, "I stand before you to admit that I was wrong. I told you humans were dangerous. I told you they could not be trusted. I told you that allowing them into our community would threaten us all." He paused, letting the silence stretch. I was right that humans are dangerous, but I was completely wrong about what that danger means. He activated the holographic display, showing footage from the battle. The Council watched as the human ship positioned itself between the weapon and the civilian sector, watched as it absorbed the deadly beam, saving thousands of lives at the cost of 32 human crew members. Humans are dangerous, continued, because they force us to examine our own assumptions. They are dangerous because they demonstrate that strength and compassion are not opposites. They are dangerous because they prove that the fiercest warriors can also be the gentlest protectors. He showed additional footage. Lisa running into the explosion to save his cubs. Human rescue teams helping recover survivors from damaged sections. Human engineers sharing repair technology with station crews. But most of all, said, his voice carrying across the chamber, humans are dangerous because they make us want to be better than we are. They show us that recognizing capacity for violence is exactly what gives us the choice to show mercy. Lisa sat in the human delegation section, still wearing the honor cord the twins had given her. She had prepared a speech defending humanity's actions, but words were doing that more effectively than anything she could say. 3 years ago, continued, my mate died in a raid. I stood before this council and warned you about that threat. You did not listen. I became convinced that the only way to protect my people was to see every potential threat clearly, to warn against every danger, to trust no one who showed capacity for violence. His voice grew quieter but no less intense. I taught my cubs to recognize danger, to identify threats, to keep themselves safe by keeping distance from anything unknown. But Captain Lisa Monroe taught them something I had forgotten. She taught them that the most dangerous beings in the galaxy are not those who have the capacity for violence, but those who have that capacity and choose mercy instead. The council chamber was completely silent. I move that humanity be granted full membership status in the Galactic Council, said, and I pledge that the warrior clans will stand beside humanity as allies and brothers, not because we no longer see them as dangerous, but because we finally understand what their danger truly means. The vote was called. It was unanimous. Every species that had hesitated before now voted for full human membership. Even the 2 species that had voted no alongside changed their stance. After the session, Lisa found in one of the council's private meeting rooms. He stood at the window, looking out at the stars. That was quite a speech, she said. It was the truth, replied. I spent weeks preparing my warning to the council. I had data, evidence, historical analysis, but all of that was based on one fundamental misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? I thought danger and trust were opposites, that if something was dangerous, it could not be trusted. But you showed me they are not opposites at all. The most trustworthy beings are often the most dangerous ones because they understand the weight of their choices. Lisa moved to stand beside him. My daughter asked me once why I became a diplomat instead of staying in the military. I told her I wanted to prevent wars rather than fight them. But the truth is more complicated than that. I learned that sometimes preventing wars means being ready to fight them. That choosing peace is meaningless unless you have the capacity to choose violence and reject it. Your daughter is fortunate to have you as a mother, said. And your cubs are fortunate to have you as a father. You taught them to be cautious, to be aware, to protect themselves. Those are valuable lessons. But you also showed them something even more important when you worked with my ship during the battle. You showed them that recognizing danger does not mean refusing to trust. It means making informed choices about who to trust and why. A message chime interrupted them, checked his communicator and smiled. My cubs are asking if you would join us for dinner tonight. They want to hear stories about Earth. Lisa smiled back. I would be honored. That evening, in family quarters, 5 beings from 2 different species shared a meal. The twins peppered Lisa with questions about Earth, about human children, about what her daughter liked to do, asked about human warrior training and combat philosophy. Ra, who had joined them, wanted to know about Earth's trading systems and spice markets. Watched his family interact with the human who had saved them, and he felt something he had not experienced since death. Hope. Not naive hope that ignored danger, but informed hope that recognized both capacity for violence and choice to show mercy. Captain Monroe, Myra said during a pause in the conversation, Father used to tell us humans were scary, but you are not scary at all. Lisa laughed. Oh, I can be scary when I need to be. Your father was not wrong that humans are capable of dangerous things, but being capable of danger and choosing to act dangerously are very different things. That is what Father does, said. He is a warrior, he is dangerous, but he protects us. Exactly, Lisa said. Your father and I are not so different. We both learned that strength without compassion is meaningless, that protecting innocence is the highest purpose of any warrior, that recognizing our capacity for violence is what gives our choice for mercy its meaning. Later, after dinner, Lisa prepared to return to her quarters, walked with her to the door. My cubs have learned more from you in a few days than I could teach them in years, he said. You taught them to recognize danger, Lisa replied. I just showed them that danger can choose to be an ally. That is your teaching, not mine. You are the one who chose to trust my tactical plan during the battle. You are the one who stood before the council and changed your position based on evidence. You showed them that wisdom means adjusting your understanding when you learn new information. Extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. Lisa took it. They have a saying, told her. The strongest blade is the one that remains in its sheath until needed. I thought that meant avoiding violence out of weakness, but you showed me it means something different. It means having the capacity for violence and the wisdom to use it only in defense of the innocent. Humanity has a similar saying, Lisa replied. Walk softly but carry a big stick. It means the same thing, be peaceful but never be harmless. They stood together in comfortable silence, two warriors from different worlds who had learned the same lessons through different paths. Outside the window, ships from dozens of species moved through space, beginning the long work of recovery and rebuilding. The galaxy had changed, not because humanity brought superior technology or military might, but because they brought a philosophy learned through 10,000 years of mistakes. That violence is sometimes necessary but never desirable. That mercy is not weakness but the highest expression of strength. That protecting children, any children, regardless of species or politics, is the duty of any being who claims to be civilized. Returned to his quarters where his cubs were already asleep. He looked at them, thinking of how close he had come to losing them. First in the explosion, then in the battle. Both times, humans had stood between his daughters and death. He had roared warnings about human danger. He had tried to protect his cubs by keeping them away from the scary predators from Earth. But his cubs had taught him something he never expected. They showed him that mercy was not the opposite of danger but its highest purpose, that the truly dangerous beings were the ones who had the power to destroy and chose instead to protect. The Alpha had roared danger, but his cubs showed him mercy. And in that mercy, both species found something stronger than fear, more lasting than victory. They found hope for a galaxy where beings of all kinds could stand together, not because they were harmless, but because they chose to wield their harm only in defense of the innocent. And that choice, realized, was what made humans the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Not because they could destroy, but because they could choose not to. And in teaching others that same choice, they made the entire galaxy stronger. He touched the small image he kept by his bedside. I understand now, he whispered to her memory. I understand what you tried to tell me before you died, that strength without compassion is tyranny, that mercy without strength is meaningless, that the purpose of warriors is not to seek battle but to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Outside his window, a human shuttle passed by, carrying relief supplies to repair damaged sections. The future was uncertain. There would be more threats, more battles, more difficult choices. But now humanity and the would face those challenges together, allies bound not by fear of each other but by recognition of shared values. The Alpha had learned his lesson, and the galaxy was better for it.